I was recently in Vietnam, and I was there doing some work. I was required to do some voiceover recordings for a couple of companies back in Australia while I was there. Now, I didn't have access to this room, which is my voiceover recording room. And what I did do, which is fine as a temporary measure, is I built myself a fort in my hotel room using a doona and some chairs. And I essentially built myself a little recording booth using materials on hand. And I was able to achieve a nice, quiet room that also didn't have reflection. You couldn't do that every day. It's not suitable. You could never use something like that if you had clients coming to do with you in the recording. You'd use professional facilities, but for the sake of being able to record some really short things and being overseas, having all my professional equipment with me but not a voiceover booth, I built myself a doona fort. So you can get away with stuff like that sometimes, but it's far from ideal. But you can recordings across the line if they're essential to do if you are away from your booth. If you have a walk-in robe or a spare room in your house, you can jump onto eBay and get some acoustic tiles and start deadening the sound of that room. The deadening test is to clap your hands and see if you can kind of hear the sound coming back at you. That's where you want to start from. You don't want to always be having to create these temporary recording spaces, throwing the doona over your head or whatever. People do use their wardrobes, but they'll treat them properly and light them and make sure there's sufficient airflow and things like that. Position on the microphone depends on the job you're doing. If it's soft and intimate sort of a voiceover, you might be quite close on the microphone, which will also pick up some of those lower frequencies in your voice. If you're singing, it's a big pop track or whatever, you're going to have to put some distance between you and the microphone because you're really projecting. Again, if you're not in an ideal recording space, the further you away from the microphone, the more we're going to start hearing the sound of that room as well. So something to keep in mind. So I guess there is no ideal position. Hopefully you're working with a sound engineer who's going to place you where they want you to be on the microphone to get the ideal sound. But it comes down to what's the content you're recording. If it's just quite a soft piece, you might be quite close on the microphone, being of course careful not to pop into the microphone like that. Whereas if it's something where you need to project more, you're going to have to give yourself a little more distance, make sure the input's not overloading, things like that. Most voiceover artists will work monitoring their own voice through headphones. 2 reasons. If you're recording in a professional studio, you've usually got a bunch of people on the other side of the glass who are giving you directions, and they'll talk to you through those. That being said, I know voiceover artists who also listen to the direction and then take their headphones off. So in some cases it's personal choice, but mostly it's so that you can have a direct feed of yourself, and it really allows you to self-analyze as you're doing the voiceover. You can hear any small imperfections when you're listening through your headphones, whereas if we're just talking now without any headphones, you may not pick up some of those really small things. Maybe it's a slight squeak in your voice or a croak or a click you won't hear, whereas through headphones you will hear those things. It allows you to be more self-critical. You've got a really direct feed of your voice, a little bit louder than what you might normally hear it. That being said, if we were recording a script that was meant to be conversational, like someone sounded like they're meant to have a chat, I would tend to take the headphones off, because when you've got the headphones on, it doesn't tend to lend itself to that more natural style. If I want to sound chatty, I'd have either headphones half off or off completely, and so I would tend to project the same as if we're just 2 people, sitting at a coffee table or at the pub or whatever having a chat. Whereas if I'm doing something that's a little more tightly scripted or retail, I definitely have the headphones on. It allows me to be more self-critical and of course to receive direction.
Thank you very much for watching. If you really enjoyed this, please press the thumbs up and subscribe. There's going to be heaps and heaps and heaps of more information coming onto the channel. Stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.